Every new season brings in some new challenges. It isn't as simple as an adjustment as changing a number. No. Each season brings a whole new set of obstacles, new tracks, new car characteristics, and don't forget about the new drivers. For some, they enter Atlanta Motor Speedway looking to build momentum for the last campaign into the next. For others, this mile-and-a-half circuit is a possible fresh slate. Who will start their quest for a championship on the right track? We're about to find out live on the Global SimRacing Channel. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway for round one of the new Precision Racing League Cup Series season, sponsored by Diecast Kings. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the booth tonight is NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver Christian Challenger. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beer. As the drivers prepare for their first challenge of the campaign, it's time to take a look at your track guide to figure out the best way around Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Welcome to the Atlanta Motor Speedway, an iconic staple on the NASCAR Cup schedule since the doors opened back in 1960. Located roughly 20 miles south of downtown in the suburb of Hampton, Atlanta has forged out a spot in history, playing host to some of the most iconic moments in motorsports. Prior to its repave and reconfiguration, Atlanta looked more like modern-day Homestead. In the summer of 1997, Atlanta was reconfigured to the 1.54-mile quad oval it's currently at. After that switch, the NASCAR Xfinity Series and Truck Series also became regular yearly competitors at the track. But it's actually an IndyCar that holds the track record here. The series ran regularly at Atlanta for 4 years. The surface here has certainly worn over time, giving way to its sister track in Texas as the fastest quad oval on the NASCAR schedule. Surface here has not seen any paving since construction finished in 1997. Over the years, the track has become famous for its super close photo finishes, thanks in part to a very wide exit off of Turn 4 compared to both Texas and Charlotte. It allows competitors to often exit 2 and even 3 wide with room to spare, and that outside lane can get quite a run to the checkered flag. That's our look at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Enjoy the show.
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around Atlanta Motor Speedway. And now is the best time to bring in my partner for this season's campaign, Christian Challenger. Christian, first things first, let's take a look at the track details because this is always, for many drivers, one of the tougher mile-and-a-halves on the entire circuit.
Yeah, this is people's real favorite mile-and-a-half. It's pretty low-grip track. Got some really fast lap times out here tonight. 29.6 right now is the fastest time, so looking pretty quick. Really different both ends of the track here. 1 and 2 is very, very fast, and there's usually maybe 1 to 2 different ways of getting through there, but 3 and 4, it's mostly everybody right down on the white line, so a very difficult track, and usually brings out some good racing, but we have seen a lot of single file this week, so we'll hope that we don't see that tonight.
It's going to be interesting on these 24 degrees of banking tonight, and what is a very hot circuit. But first things first, I'd like to remind you the series sponsor for this year's campaign is Diecast Kings. Shop Diecast Kings, your home for the best selection of NHRA and NASCAR diecast cars at diecastkings.com. Once again, diecastkings.com. You can also go to Facebook at facebook.com/diecastking. A new sponsor is also jumping on board for this season. That is ButtKicker. ButtKicker products and incredible immersion and realism are brought by them to every game. You can feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. For more information, to feel what you're missing, go to ButtKicker.com. Now let's talk about a brand new season. Some of these drivers coming from the last campaign. Let's take the chance to look at Season 1's final drivers and team championship standings. Richard Regan Jr. won his first PRL Cup Series title by 74 points over James O'Brien by the checker flag. Thomas Morris finished in third. Pat Harvey with Skidmark Motorsports finished in fourth, with Josh Slade rounding out the top 5. Regan Jr. finished the campaign with 4 wins, 6 top 5s, and 8 top 10s. But it was a good team performance from Skidmark Motorsports in the team standings. in Season 1 of the calendar year of 2020. Let's take a look at those standings, where they finished with 662 combined points. Pilot Performance Group, Whataback Road Trip Racing, Crash Motorsports, and 24/7 Motorsports rounded out the top 5 in teams in PRL Cup Series competition. For Skidmark Motorsports, they combined for 6 top 5s and 13 top 10s throughout the season. As drivers practice their starts in the closing stages of practice, let's take a look at the race details for when they get the real green flag, Christian.
Yeah, so round 1 of 10, we usually do 10 rounds this series. This kind of lines up with the iRacing Championships, and we're going to be doing 85 laps or 60 minutes tonight. We don't suspect that we'll get near the timeout, so I think we'll get all those 85 laps in. Fixed setup as always in this series. No fast repair tonight, and a 24 incident limit.
Keep that 85 laps in mind. It is a one-stopper in terms of the fuel for tonight. As these drivers finish up practice, they have about 3 minutes or so to get acquainted with the racetrack. Let's take a look at the conditions for tonight's action. Currently 80 degrees the air temp, 108 degrees is the track temp, with a decent amount of humidity at 51 degrees, 51% I should rather say, with winds just being 2 miles an hour to the north. Your thoughts on the weather conditions as a driver here at a track such as this?
Well, 108 is pretty hot for most tracks, but for Atlanta, we've actually seen in the past some temperatures as high as 130, so not too bad, and I think a lot of people will have experience in this kind of temperature, but as we see, it's really going to be all about restarts and getting away with a good pull, and then trying to get in line as fast as you can, not get stuck out on that top side, especially when you get down to 3 and 4.
And one of the beautiful things when it comes to a lot of the practice starts is you see a lot of these groupings of these drivers seeing potentially what they're going to be dealing with for today. You mention it. It's been a fun track, but at the same time, it can be a difficult one, especially off the exit of Turn 2 here in Atlanta traditionally.
Yeah, it's very tight on the exit there, and the banking drops off very, very quickly. So if you're just a little bit higher than you want to be, you can end up in a really bad scenario where all of a sudden the front just completely goes away, or actually the rear. You see a lot of drivers doing both things, either going straight up to the outside wall or spinning down at the bottom, or actually a combination of the two if they hit the outside wall first. So it is a really difficult corner. I think the 3 and 4 end of the track is, I want to say, a little bit easier to navigate, but it's actually a bit more important to have a really good line through there. We see a lot of drivers who are very fast here. They'll come off the corner very, very low, and they seem to have better tire wear doing that. So it's something I'm going to be looking out for.
A little bit looking throughout that, as well as you look on board with some of these drivers in closing stages of practice. But one of the main things that was adjusted when it came to the new build, and that is in regards to, for those streaming for the first time, the new iRacing build that adjusts these cars. They were adjusted physically to the 2020 World Package. Some of the other adjustments as well, though, Christian, we were discussing this a bit before the start of today's action, was the tires and how they wear and how they've built up heat. That's changed a little bit compared to the last season of competition in PRL Cup Series. Talk us about those changes.
Yeah, that seems to have had quite a big impact upon the racing. Last season we saw a lot of kind of draft packs like you would at a super speedway, and now you can already kind of see it in practice, is that the field spreads out very, very quickly, gets down to one line very, very quickly, and then starts to spread apart very quickly, which we hadn't seen before. And that does seem related to the tires. It also seems like the cars are just a little bit quicker down the straights as well now, and that might play into it too. But the tires definitely, it's definitely a different, it's still the new tire model, so to speak, but it's definitely different than how it was last season. It seems like you build up temperature much, much quicker.
So in turn, you mentioned some of those changes. With the start of qualifying too, want to ask this, is because we talked about the importance of track position. What types of challenges now do you think some of these drivers may have compared to last season that they might have to deal with?
Well, I think qualifying is now much more important than it was in the past. Obviously, it's always important, but with how difficult it is to pass and how quickly the field will spread apart, if you start very far back in the field, it's going to be really, really difficult to move up. You're just not going to have the same opportunities that you did when everybody was packed together really tightly, where, say, the leader would only have 2 seconds over 20th place. So you're not going to see that anymore. 20th is probably going to be about 5 or 6 seconds back. So it's going to take drivers a lot longer to progress through the field. puts a lot more emphasis on qualifying. The leader, I feel, is at a really big advantage with clean air now. So I think we're going to see a couple of drivers who maybe didn't qualify last season are going to change their mindset, and they're going to go out and set laps now.
One of the newer drivers on the campaign for this season is Andy Spicer. He's one of the first qualifiers you see on your screen, and the virtual racing school number 22. Of course, we talked about the importance of especially the second lap here in qualifying. The first time around, he'll be one of the first drivers to put in an official time at a 30.480. Now, the fastest practice times with draft were in the 29.6s. That is, in compared to a lot of the air drivers that are already putting times on the board, a decent chunk off the pace compared to, say, the Sim Racers for Mental Health machine that's putting in a time that's up towards the lower portions of the 30 flats to start the queue.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of drivers already down in the 29.8s. I think Pole is probably going to be about a 29.7, but I don't suspect we're going to see those 29.6s.
Yeah, the draft is a major factor, but the 29.7s, some of the drivers are putting up pretty quick. David A. Wilson Jr., along with Jay Felton. Some of the fastest drivers in qualifying so far. Should note, Felton and Braden Johnson were amongst the fastest practice drivers for tonight. But with this type of racing tonight, 85 laps the distance, again, what are some of the other things you're thinking about when a new season starts like this tonight?
Well, I think we've got obviously a couple of new drivers here. We've got a couple of old hands as well, and it's always interesting with this series. We were talking about that a little bit before we came on air about how there's usually a contingent of guys who are kind of here all the time, and then every season you get a kind of a swap around. Some drivers tend to sort of season out, and then they'll come back for a following one, and that kind of thing. So I think the first race is always feeling out kind of the new guys and how they race against you, and what you can and you can't get away with them, and that does tend to bring out a few more yellows. But I think if you do have a scenario where it spreads out and it goes green, then I suspect we're going to see a couple of drivers try a very aggressive undercut just to get them out front so that they have the track position. And then if you are the leader, as we were saying with the clean air, it's so hard to get past the leader. I think that'll be a really big advantage to have, and I suspect we'll see somebody try that.
New man on top of the pylon, Adam Zemke, in a new look, just set the fastest time with a 29.714. For those tuning in for the first time to a GSRC iRacing broadcast, it is solo qualifying. All the drivers essentially drive on their own on the racetrack. However, there is simultaneous drivers qualifying at the same time. Mark Kalin, for example, he's making way around the racetrack where others are still making their way on the exit of turns 3 and 4. Such as Paul Williams II, who comes home in 4th at the end of his session time. So, as well, another thing to note before we take to the green flag, before the end of this qualifying session, there are a lot of teams taking part in the championship for that campaign. 24/7 Racing returns with Williams and Telez. Wadapac Racing bring Lane, Sumner, and Kalin. Skidmark Motorsports lining up Johnson, Harvey, and Besaw. Crash Racing with Durbin and Costello, Baker Duke Racing with Duke and Baker, Pilot Performance Group with Brown, Wilson Jr. and Morris. The Ballistic Union, though, one of two new teams, should know. Richard Regan Jr., currently the only entry, and Third Rock Racing, the other new team with Keith Haney and Eric Talent. Your quick final thoughts with the new season about to get underway.
I think restarts are key here. I normally say this, but I really feel it now. I think with this new package and this new tire adjustment, so to speak, I think definitely track position is a bigger thing than it's ever been.
The last teams mentioned, unfortunately, a crash just coming out of the quad oval for Rescue Racing, which features Chatley and Hilton. But it's time to see how those drivers line up for the opening race of the second season of the 2020 calendar year. In qualifying, Adam Zemke on top of the pylon with a 29.714. He'll start alongside one of the newcomers in Jay Felton. David Wilson Jr. starts in 3rd, while in 4th position, it's Paul Williams II. Stephen P. Durbin starts in 5th with Thomas Morris in the 6th spot. In row number 4, it's Scotty Johnson, starting alongside the defending series champion, Richard Regan Jr. Joshua Daniels starts alongside Braden Johnson to round up the top 10.
Then we got two old hands on the next row, Mark Kalin and Charles Sumner in 11th and 12th, just missing out on that top 10. Behind them, we got Danny Cervantes and Jeff Costello, and then Robert Bissell Jr. actually back in 15th. I suspect we'll see him move forwards a little bit. And then a newcomer to the series, Thomas Freitas in 16th. Jose Tellez, we saw him win a race last season, but he starts this race back in 17th alongside Tristan Callahan in 18th. Then we got Colton Lane and Baron Hilton in 19th and 20th.
21st position, it's Eric Talent. He'll start alongside Pat Harvey deep in the field on the 29, 7 9s, and 30 flats. Robert Mulligan finished in 23rd in qualifying. Andy Spicer, 24th, was the first driver on the track. For the last driver recorded time, 25th. Brandon Chatley. One thing to note, Bradley Hawley is in race control. That will move drivers up from 28 up to 26. That will move Haney to that row. For example, J.D. Baker starts 27, Chad Brown provisionally 29th, Adam Shane in 30th, and Billy Rowley and James Duke round out the 31 entrants for the opening race of the season. It's going to be an entertaining 185 laps the distance, about 130 total miles around this 1.54 mile circuit. As mentioned at the top of the broadcast, 24 degrees of banking. Christian, first thoughts. What are your keys to victory for tonight?
I think the biggest thing is making sure that you're on the bottom of the track, and that if you have an opportunity to shuffle someone out onto the top side and get underneath them, I think that you have to take it. You have to be pretty ruthless here, especially on this initial start and then the subsequent restarts that we might have. I think if you get stuck on that top side, you're really struggling. You're going to be out there for a long time. You're going to lose a lot of track possession. I think if you are in those scenarios, then you have to be looking at doing something with your pit strategy, maybe doing a really aggressive short pit to put yourself out front, out on your own, just so that you're not stuck in the mid-pack. It's going to be so hard to pass cars once we get about 10 to 15 laps into a run.
Absolutely, especially with the high tire degradation and the aerodynamics. Who are some of the drivers you're keeping an eye on here for this event to be some of the favorites?
Well, I think we have to keep an eye on Richard Regan Jr. starting back in 8th. Obviously, last season he won it for a reason. He was pretty dominant as a driver. I'm actually a bit surprised he's starting as far back as he is. Another driver who was very aggressive last season, Jose Tellez, starting his 17th. I'm going to be keeping an eye on him. He's usually one to watch when it comes to cutting through the pack.
Going to be an interesting one. Some new looks, some adjustments for the drivers. But tonight, they're all set to start a new campaign. Green flag is out. We're underway from Atlanta Motor Speedway for the beginning of a new PRL Cup Series season. Flames start up to the gears for the top grouping of drivers. For the bottom side, the place you want to be at the beginning of this race. Zemke controlling that line. Wilson Jr. trying to poke his way underneath. Nearly got to the chance to make it 3-1.
It's a little bit of contact right there for the second spot, and immediately you see the aero push coming in, even on lap 1, as we see most of the field drop to the bottom already.
One thing to note, Tellez did start from the pit lane. Rowley did not make the start. Overall, 30 drivers took to the green flag. But you talked about the advantage of the clean air at the start. It could be difficult for Jay Felton to try and make a move. He was impressive, though, in the draft. He was working hard with Johnson in that draft all practice long to make sure they were ready for this one.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be very difficult to get past Zemke. He's a pretty strong driver anyway, and especially being out front, it's just going to be tough for them to build a run on him. But at the moment, we see throughout the pack, everybody has gone single file very, very quickly, and there's very few actual side-by-side battles going on right now.
Top 6 positions have held serve for the most part. There is the first side-by-side battle, though, for 5th, where Durbin's on the bottom, Morris is on the top in the Off the Husk podcast machine. We also have Richard Regan Jr. also looking to carve his way beat by these two. And you can see the difference in the lines already from Regan Jr. trying to find any sort of run to get between these drivers. Nearly thought about making it 3 wide in a half a lane distance.
Yeah, and it is something that you got to think about. If you do have 2 guys side by side in front of you, they're slowing each other down a tremendous amount. So if you catch them with a huge amount of momentum, and there is that opportunity to put them 3, I think you really have to consider taking it.
He's actually going to push the driver on the bottom in Durbin now to try and clear them on by. The problem is now, he's now side by side here, Christian, and here's the thing though, he's got that preferred line already trying to side.
Yeah, I think he made a smart decision there to have the bottom line rather than the top. It's still going to be difficult for him to get by, as we've seen. It's not easy, especially if he's side by side on the exit of the 2. It cuts a ton of speed out of the car, but it looks like he's going to be clear this time.
You see that difference in the lines. Braden Jr. able to get all the way to the white line. Yes, you get some decent runs up on the top, but not enough to be able to defend for positions in the short run at the very least here. A lot of drivers already quickly single file inside the top 13 positions. Now it's a matter, though, of figuring out who's going to have the pace, especially with Zemke now already about 6/10 in front of the second place car in Felton.
Yeah, and that really comes down to what we were saying about the leader having a pretty big advantage. He's the only guy who's really been able to pull anything on the cars behind him, although it does look like we're going to have a bit of a battle for second. It looks like Felton's coming under pressure from Wilson.
You see on board with Wilson Jr., he's already found a way to damage the right front fender. That's where that push-up is, you see in the middle of your screen. So that's going to affect his speed just a little bit on that car.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he got that on the entry to turn 3. I noticed in practice he actually made the same error. I'm calling him out on it. He might not have done this, but I did see a couple of drivers just catching the right front on the wall on entry to 3, and I suspect that might be what's happened.
Reagan Jr. nearly did the same thing a couple positions back. It's so easy to do here in Atlanta, though, on an entry to turn 3 because you're so focused on following the car in front, you just scrape the safer barrier. That's all focusing around to with the P7 on back train with Thomas Morris leading that grouping. Johnson, Kalen, Daniels, Johnson and co. all lined up in a row, and it's the matter though of can somebody get something to work inside this train.
And that's the thing, even if the head of the line is perhaps slower than everybody behind him because it's so difficult to pass them, it just builds everybody up. Nobody's ever actually able to really make anything happen. And the other thing is when you do get those big lines, if you do try and make a move, especially if you try something like trying to go to the top and it doesn't work, you'll just get shuffled all the way to the back of that line. So you do have to kind of take your chances in a methodical way and in a smart way, one that's not really going to cost you a lot if it doesn't come off.
Already, Daniel's been shuffled out from the bottom line because Johnson nearly rode his back bumper trying to get a run off the corner. And here's the difficult part now. That bottom, there's no opening for at least 4 cars, so Daniels not only is having to potentially burn off the tires a little bit more on the top line, he's got nowhere to file into potentially for at least the next little bit.
Yeah, you see Sumner's underneath him, and then the nearest opening he's got is actually after Colton Lane, so that's 3 cars back. I think he's going to be lucky if he can actually make that work on the top, but he's going to have a pretty good runoff of 4 this time. He might actually be clearing a 1.
Someone that is actually making things work in the dirty air is Braden Johnson. He's trying to get back to above his starting position, already to the inside line of Kalen, coming off of turn number 2. And it's going to be interesting, again, to see how drivers handle the tires, because if you burn up that right front tire, yes, it's hard to pass, but if you don't have a right front tire, it's hard to hold on to the pace you need, because these drivers have already fallen off 4/10. Battle for the lead, side by side. Zemke has been reeled in by Felton, and Felton has been able to make the move work. New race leader, Jay Felton.
Yeah, and I'm really impressed by that. It looked like for a little bit near the start there that Felton was actually falling back, but I'm wondering now if he was just saving a little bit of tire, making sure he didn't lose that second spot, and then's going for a run for it, and he's actually been able to pull off the pass, which is something that we're not really seeing a lot of right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and drivers have already fallen to the 31-second bracket for those curious at the moment. That's how quickly the tires fall off here in Atlanta, but it's, again, something Felton practiced a lot for tonight's event. Some of the other drivers now, we're starting to see the advantages of some of the competitors who may have saved, and the others who may have burned their stuff up early, for example, fighting multiple positions side by side.
Yeah, and we're now really starting to see the field spread out even more. There's really big gaps going on, as we see right here. We got Joshua Daniels has actually managed to get himself back to the bottom and is starting to move forwards a little bit at this point. We are seeing a couple of drivers really struggling with the tires. As you say, falling off to 31.3s already after starting out in the high 29s. So the fall off is very extreme now. It's actually maybe 2 to 3, perhaps even on some tracks 4 times what we were seeing on the last build.
Right now, one of the biggest droppers right now is Morris on that high line. In that 69 machine, a -5 on the start. And now is struggling still on that top line. The difference, though, between some of these competitors that handling the draft, it seems, again, is again trying to make sure they get the right arc. There's some of that was discussed at some tracks. It looks like Morris just can't arc it in here, Christian.
Yeah, it looks like he's really struggling just to get the car turned, so I'm thinking that he's probably just been driving in really deep at the start of the run, and it doesn't really hurt you then when you've got a lot of tire grip available to you, but late on it's really punishing. He's holding the top okay in 1 and 2, but it just looks like he's trying to get too much out of the car, and exit always has to check up, and rather than having that big run we normally see with cars on the top line, he's actually losing ground.
What can he do at this point, though, to try and counteract that, to make sure he can try and at least arc it down to protect from all these drivers wanting to get by?
I honestly think at this point in time, with how much he's stuck out there on the top and how much it looks like he's hurting that right front, it might actually be better for him to just kind of actually let this pack go, try and tag onto the back of it, and just see if he can't kind of right the ship that way. I don't think he's going to get much out of trying to fight this position, and this is almost going to be put 3 wide into 3 here.
Oh, and that's close, and he's hit. Able to save it as he goes up to the top of the racetrack. Morris with a heck of a save, but contact was left for a quarter path.
And he has ended up at the back of that line, but obviously not in the way that he would have wanted to. The reason I was calling that was though because there's that gap now between that line that he was in and then this next group behind, and just a bit of an opportunity for him to maybe regather himself and be there for the end of the run.
He's now fallen all the way back to 17th. By the way, in 4th position, that's where our defending champion has cycled along, able to get just by Scotty Johnson. However, Scotty Johnson wants the run back here. They also have, however, one of the fastest drivers on the racetrack, Braden Johnson. He's one of the drivers we talked about a little bit, working with Felton in that practice, was one of the quickest drivers in the draft. We're falling on board with him. He's been one of the quickest cars in this field outside of Felton.
Yeah, and he's been doing a really good job of moving up through the field. We're not seeing a lot of moving around going on in the top 10, as we see a couple of drivers actually coming down to pit road already.
Oh, there's cars actually in the grass they are passing by. Andy Spicer came down the pit lane along with Josue Tellez. What in the world happened here? Remember, Tellez started in the pit lane for this race. Let's take a look at the GSRC replay, and it looks like that might have been Spicer having some trouble when Tellez reeled up.
Yeah, it looked like Spicer was a little bit off the pace here with Tellez catching up to him. And side by side coming out of 2, and then some contact and Tellez into the outside wall.
Yeah, that sent them both spinning down the apron. Both of them saved it. And then there's the answer to the question of how did they both end up in the grass again? We're about to see that here as both drivers are already committed to the pit lane. This is as the leaders are passing by, and you'll see Spicer loses it again.
Very, very strange incident there. Obviously already down on the apron, so not coming off the track at speed and just ended up in the grass somehow.
An interesting scenario for Spicer, and already getting some damage repaired in the pit lane. His pit stop already at 52 seconds plus. P4 continues to heat up a little bit. Scotty Johnson has gotten on by Regan Jr. Braden Johnson now looks to follow suit. It looks like the right front tire is starting to burn a little bit now on Regan Jr. as he is struggling to try and defend the faster cars in the Johnsons right now.
Yeah, it's actually something he talked about a little bit last season when he came in for an interview one time, was how he'd been working a lot on trying to save his tires, and I think this build is going to actually maybe exacerbate any tire saving issues you might have, and it looks like he might have just gone a little bit too hard too soon, and now he's struggling and dropping back a little bit.
Now approaching 61 laps to go, and he's not making it easy on Johnson either. Actually forces him loose on the squeeze. But you can't keep this up forever, that's the thing.
Yeah, you really can't, especially, well, it's actually either car here, because you do have a limited number of attempts at trying to pass someone before you burn your own tires off. And you see Braden Johnson there coming off of 4 quite loose and burning up that right rear, and as he's giving up the attack right now, but I suspect we'll see a big run from him maybe in a 1 here. It looks like he's really winding it up off of 4.
A good wind up. Here's the move. Johnson with some good speed, over 185 miles an hour. However, again, just can't get the move quite yet underneath the ballistic union machine. Does again have the preferred line, and the more they fight, as we've discussed many times over the past few races, especially in Season 1, the more you fight, the more it allows drivers like Daniels in the backdrop to come in, as Braden Johnson looks to check out.
Yeah, and just speaking of that, as we mentioned pre-race, we usually see the gap from, say, the lead down to 20th place being really, really small, say 2 to 3 seconds. In terms of this race already, we're seeing this fight here is for the top 5, and these guys are 4.5 seconds off the lead.
And that's the thing, though, too, Christian. It's kind of towards what we've seen in real life back in 2019. When the Cup Series made its package debut here at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Yeah, and I think it is an interesting thing to see that it actually might now be somewhat more realistic, but maybe a little bit more frustrating to race, as we see Paul Williams, driver who's made some interesting strategy calls last season to get himself some good results, being one of the first drivers to come down, trying that undercut strategy that I was talking about. So he's now going to try and go all the way to the end here.
This is basically the very top of being able to make it on fuel too, mind you, at about 58, 57 laps. At this point, though, do you like this move? Because it's a massive undercut. Durbin's also following the same strategy now, too.
I like this if there's a late race caution, because I don't think it works out at all for you if the race goes green. Well, I say that it might net you 1 to 2 spots because you'll be hard to pass. But in the position he was in, this isn't going to be a race-winning move unless he has a yellow with, say, 15 to 20 laps to go, at which point he's probably still going to be the leader, and he'll have that track position when everybody, and they will come down and pit. There will be no staying out over a long run here, as we were talking, drivers falling off over a second within the first 10 laps, so if there is a yellow, everybody's going to pit, even if the run's as short as, say, 5 laps.
Halfway point for comparison's sake, by the way, is in about 13-ish laps or so, as they're now passing by more drivers, including Andy Spicer on the apron. But it's the matter, though, too, of are you going to be able to make it? Because some of these drivers, again, as we talked about, have fallen off a cliff. Wilson Jr. is now fallen off a cliff. Kalen's fallen off a cliff. While Jay Felton, he's been able to pull away 2/10 a lap from second.
Well, that's the other thing as well. Obviously, that really short pit strategy. Yeah, you might be able to make it on fuel, but are you going to actually make it on tire? Obviously, we've talked about how much wear there is, and I think it is a big ask. It's not a trivial task to try and do an entire fuel run on a tire here.
Yeah. At this point, as a driver, when you're seeing how this race is shaping up, what's kind of going through your head at this point? Then to try and think of all this. To try and categorize all this to make sure you have a chance to fight against Felton?
I think at the moment Felton is really in a position that's quite enviable. Obviously, he's still running very fast times and pulling away from the field, and nobody behind can really do much about it. He got out to the lead, and he's had that clean air. I think if you're inside the top 5, you're still within this fight. Though I think if you're, say, Richie Regan Jr., and you're about 5 seconds behind, it's going to be very tough to do much. That is a significant disadvantage. I think if you want the track position, you're going to have to look at maybe pitting 3 to 5 laps earlier than say halfway point is, just to try and get yourself ahead of him and maybe not mess him up physically that way, but mentally if you just put cars in his way to cut through. Sometimes we see drivers will struggle with that. And I think really that's going to be the way to beat Jay Felton right now. He's not going to get beaten on raw pace.
Braden Jr. lost the bottom now to Daniels as they fight side by side. This is for a top 5 position, and lots of hungry cars in this too. Esau Jr. with a new look this season, dropping a Dale Earnhardt Sr. throwback, and with the silver numbers in the backdrop of Daniels. Braden Jr. though able to be given the bottom line once again to go back single file, as it looks like they might have realized they're losing a little bit of time dropping to the 32 flats. But this is again one of the groups you were talking about here where we might see that undercut be favorable.
Yeah, and I think if you're somebody like Charles Sumner at the back of this line, you can see that Regan Jr. is actually struggling quite a bit right now. And obviously this is longer on performance, say 35 laps into a run. If you're still stuck behind him on, say, lap 42 and nothing's really happening, that's the point when I'd be considering, okay, let's short pit him by 2 to 3 laps, because you'll come out ahead of him. He might catch you, he might pass you, but the likelihood he's going to fall off the same way in the second run is still there, so it'll probably end up as a net gain, and plus you won't be in this line. It's horrible to be in lines of cars like this.
Indeed, as we take a look now at Zemke, he has been reeled in, and Zemke is not matching the same pace that Scotty Johnson and Braden Johnson have been able to pull on the racetrack. Those are the two drivers right in the back mirror of that white in tealish 42 machine. And here's the conundrum, in my opinion, here, Christian, too, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. As Braden Johnson tries to make a move on Scotty Johnson and nearly makes contact, able to save it, however. The arrow at one hand hurts your tires. On the other, you don't have that draft. You aren't going to be quick enough to potentially reel in drivers such as Zemke unless you get some major fall off.
Yeah, and I think this is a thing where you kind of have that double-edged sort of sword when it comes to short pitting. Like you say, you're probably coming out on your own and you're not going to have that draft, but at the same time, you're not going to have that aero push. It's not going to hurt the tires, so it might end up being a short-term loss, but you're probably going to have much better tires for the end of the race. And actually, as we see Paul Williams here, he's giving us a really good example as he's catching Johnson & Johnson right now on his new tires. You can see the difference in terms of pace right now.
Yeah, Paul Williams II is running 30.5. Majority of the field in the 31.7s through 9, some of them the 32 flats. That's how big of a difference there is in fall off. About 2 seconds plus in just the span of nearly 40 laps. By the way, Kalen is into the pit lane. By the way, he has taken the undercut strategy. Charles Sumner also getting ready to potentially pit as we take a look at the lap differentials between Williams and Johnson. How big of a difference there is each time.
Yeah, so this is where Paul Williams' strategy is really dependent on a late race caution, because he's gaining all this time now. It's not for free. He's going to have to give it back late on. And that's where the last 20 laps of the race, he's going to be very, very vulnerable. And he needs a yellow at that point. He's definitely going to be the leader after everybody pits. There's no question about it. But he won't be the leader for long, and that's where his strategy really relies upon getting a yellow.
Still fighting out the battling as Zemke still trying to hold off Scotty Johnson. Pit stops are underway. Regan Jr. and Daniels just ducked down this time by. Charles Sumner and Brendan Chatley are finishing up their service. Also joining is Baron Hilton, one of the rescue racing machines. And Pitts Road is going to be busy as we are at nearly the halfway point of this race.
Yeah, a lot of drivers coming in 1 to 2 laps earlier than I would have expected, as we see Scotty Johnson's coming down this time as well with Adam Zemke in tow.
You see many of the drivers getting off and underway from their service. Zemke in, Scotty Johnson in. Also have Danny Cervantes with a quiet race so far in the pit lane. Hilton still getting service done. Hilton, though, it's a lengthy one, more than about 30 seconds now. So a potential penalty maybe for him on the pit entry. Your thoughts on the pit entry here at Atlanta?
Yeah, pit entry here is deceptively difficult. You think that you've actually got quite a long time to slow down for it, and you really don't. And with the tire drop off, even if you practice it beforehand, you're probably not practicing with 40-lap old tires. So it's very easy to overshoot it, and we've seen a couple of drivers end up in the grass in this race and in other races as well. So it's one of the more difficult pit entries, and you really have to get the car slowed down a lot earlier than you would think.
Can confirm it was speeding for Baron Hilton. Richard Regan Jr. also busted for speeding. Had to also serve 55 total seconds in the stall. More drivers such as Haney, Jay Felton in the pits. Able to get off and away. Braden Johnson also coming down this time. And drivers able to save it, but some in the grass. Scotty Johnson mowing the grass right now as he tries to get around a few drivers. There was contact between Eric Talon and Andy Spicer up at the top of the racetrack. Take a look at the GSRC GSRC replay, I should rather say. It's in turn 3, where you see here, there's drivers cycling into the pits, and then there would be contact right here, where Spicer tries to go way high and hits the...
Yeah, a very strange incident there. Spicer went all the way to the top, tried to go around that other car, and managed to bounce off the outside wall and come down from the top. Very unfortunate for Scotty Johnson, though. He'd been having a great race. He's third before that stop, so this is just one of those things where there's nothing he can do here. He's just really extremely unlucky. I feel very bad for him right now.
And don't forget, too, with these cars, you hit the grass hard enough, you can damage the suspension, too. So it's not just the bodywork. That suspension potentially could be damaged from how hard he bumped on that grass.
Yeah, he obviously took a pretty big hit to the right front as those cars came down the track, and we can see Regan Jr.'s cleared him without much effort at all. And as you say, going down through the grass tends to kick the car way up into the air and will damage the underside when it lands back down.
Yeah, you see some of the damage. Should note, Lane and Besaw Jr. have not pit. Lane misses the cone, and welcome to the grass coats in Lane. That is a hard pit road entry for Lane. Too fast of an entry.
Yeah, and that's disastrous for him because he didn't even actually get in the lane either, so he's going to lose a ton of time right now just getting the car back up to speed so he can get back around to have another go at it.
Besant Jr. has been passed by multiple drivers, while Paul Williams II is the new race leader. He is in front by about just a second in front of Jeff Costello, who has to still come and make service. As mentioned, Lane now has to come down a second time to try and make his pit stop. So, the gamble, though, only got him about 8 seconds the gap in front of where fighting is going on. That includes the fight on fresh tires between Johnson and Zemke.
Yeah, just looking at the lap times here, Paul Williams' second last lap was a 31.5, Jay Felton a 30.1, so about 1.3 to 1.4 seconds difference. And as you said, he's only got that 8-second lead, already down to 7 seconds. So he needs a yell within the next 5 to 6 laps, otherwise he's gonna be going backwards in a hurry.
Yeah, and they have traffic to deal with too, such as that 81 machine who lets them on go. And it was a rough pit cycle for many competitors. The 81 of Durban, they just passed by. 55 seconds served because of a speeding penalty. Regan Jr., Kalen also clipped. Haney, Harvey, Hilton, and Duke also penalized. Cervantes with a 26-second pit stop as well, while Shane had to take 18 seconds in the pit lane. Not a great run for some of these drivers now, unfortunate to start their seasons, but others, such as Chatley a plus 17, Baker a plus 18, Lane a plus 16. Lane, though, is stretching even longer now since he missed the pit lane.
Yeah, and I think Lane's really in trouble here. He's going to have to pit, within the next 5 laps, but it looks like his right front might even be very close to going down. He has no corner exit speed right now.
This is actually a track where you can actually blow the tire too, and remember, you reach 0% on the tire, that tire will abruptly send you hard into the right side wall.
Yeah, and that's where it's a huge risk. Not only are you going very, very slow as we see Lane actually comes down, Jeff Costello is still out there, though, on this same strategy. But this is a huge risk in terms of staying out, because you are very slow, and you have that risk of if that right front goes down, as you say, you can't stop the car going to the wall. It just plows completely straight, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Now with Lane taking pit stop service down the lane. Just one driver not yet to pit, and it's the one that just hit the wall in Jeff Costello. He'll still try and stretch it out a little bit, but Costello not helping his car with that hit to the safer barrier.
Yeah, and I really can't believe that he's staying out at this point. There is surely nothing to be gained by doing this.
He could be trying to gamble to stay on the lead lap, because here's the thing, if there's a caution flag, with how many laps many of these competitors have already turned at Atlanta, you stay out on old tires, you're going to be at least 6 to 8 tenths off the pace compared to, say, these drivers who would be able to pit for fresh time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. As we see, Jeff Costello still struggling off of 4, still going around for another lap, starting his 53rd lap, I believe, on these the tires.
The field run is about 56 plus laps or so here at Atlanta. That was one of the things also adjusted a little bit in recent weeks on the iRacing service. Some drivers having to take some excursions to get around, and I think he wants to try and get down to the bottom. The problem is there's no hole to get down there.
Yeah, and he's really up in the wall. That right front's definitely gone down now.
Flat tire for Costello. He's hard into the inside wall. Off the racetrack, however, no caution flag for Costello. And there was
just going straight up into the wall, and then you see the car does that very, very strange behavior there where the left side's really kicking up into the sky. We can't see the right front down on our screen, but I can tell you that's definitely the right front is down when that happened.
He is still struggling to get off the bottom of the racetrack at the pit entry, and it's not a good time for Costello. Finally pulls off the racetrack, no caution flag. And you can actually see it right there, that right front dip down is that flag. Race lead, though, up for grabs. Felton on the fresher tires to the inside. Paul Williams the second on the outside line. The difference last time by 8 tenths in terms of pace. And Felton passes him like a rolling stone.
Yeah, and Felton just reclaiming the lead there, and I think now it's going to be extremely difficult, even if a yellow does come out, to beat Jay Felton. He's got the track position. He's clearly one of if not the outright fastest driver out here today, and I think no matter what happens, it's going to be very difficult to beat him now that he's reclaimed that lead. Something interesting though is that obviously Paul Williams is out there on that very, very long run strategy, and as we were seeing with Jeff Costello and how slow he was at the end of the run, that's how slow Paul Williams is going to be. So if he doesn't get a yellow, he's gonna have that same scenario where by the last 10 laps of the run, he's gonna be so slow, and everybody's just gonna train past him.
Now that could be a major stretch for him right now, and you can see how much that gap is stretching in just one corner alone, with how much grip and how much throttle he's able to hold already. About 1.1 seconds the gap on the racetrack. They are battling for 5th position, by the way, where Daniels is a bit close now with the red box with Robert Bisson Jr. Right now, there is a difference in terms of the tires. Remember, Bisson Jr. taking a bit of a different cycle than Daniels. We go over to Daniels' car in 5th position. You can see he's getting reeled in. Also, Bisson Jr. has the advantage yet disadvantage of the draft.
Yeah, and now that the pit stops have really cycled out, like just taking a look through the list at some really big movers, and Bisson Jr. is one of them. He's up from 15th into 6th right now. Another big mover, as we were saying in the first round, Braden Johnson from 10th to 3rd. But the biggest mover I can see is J.D. Baker. We've not really spoken much about him at all, but he's up from 27th into 9th right now.
Yeah, that is one of the Baker Duke racing machines right now in the 78 in P number 9. Let's take a look towards him, and you can see that 78 looking for some sponsors and potentially impressing some people to get some people onto his race car. Started all the way back in 27th position, did not put in a qualifying time, however, was in the top 10 in practice. By the way, Bisson Jr. on the slightly fresher tires made the pass right as the caution comes out. Caution flag is out for the first time, and it involves Wilson Jr., Callahan, and a couple other drivers. Callahan, the main cause in the 27.
Yeah, heavy damage on the 27 there, both front and rear, so he's obviously had big contact with probably the wall and another driver.
He's already potentially going to lose a lap as Felton makes the pass on by. It seems Kalen was one of the drivers he was fighting with, the 27, Callahan was. And it brings out just our first yellow of the race in turn 1. And they were fighting hard, mind you, Christian, for this position.
Yeah, and there's always a lot of fight with that right rear. As we see, looked like there's just some netcode between the two of them. Callahan was trying to run up the track and get that big arc in as he gets clipped by another driver there. We'll have to see who
Morris.
him.
Thomas Morris.
So, a bad day for Morris there. He was clearing it on the bottom, but just clipped the back of the 27.
Yeah, and you can see Morris right there. Morris was doing what he needed to get to the apron, avoid the car in the middle of the track, but he couldn't get low enough. Now has lost his engine from this. Look on board as he gets on the brakes, tries to cut it, can't get it down.
Yeah, I think he was thinking that they were going to stay at the top of the track until he was long since past them, but looked like Callahan started coming down with that spinning top motion and unfortunately just wasn't able to slow the car up enough to cut underneath.
First pit stops of the race brings Paul Williams II, under the first yellow flag stops of the race, should say, to the point. So a heck of a pit stop strategy for Williams II brings him first out of the lane.
Yeah, and as we're talking, that he needed a yellow to stop him free falling through the field, and he got one right as he needed it. Only Felton had passed him, so pitted from second and came out in the lead.
Coming out behind him was Felton, Johnson, Braden Johnson specifically, Adam Zemke, Bisson Jr., Chatley, Daniels, and Baker among some of the top positions. A couple other drivers, though, were into a bit of a box. There were many fast drivers in this PRL Cup Series event who ended up getting black flags we talked about during the green flag cycle. Now they're in the peculiar situation of, do you take the wave and risk being far off the pace and hope for a yellow? Or do you elect to take fresh tires and hope for the lucky dog?
Well, one driver who looks like he's taking the wave appears to be Richard Regan Jr. He's not come down. And another driver that we've seen last season be very competitive but haven't seen much of tonight, Keith Haney, also taking the wave with him.
I was going to say before the speeding penalty, he was one of the faster cars on the track. It's been an unfortunate first race in team championship competition for Third Rock Racing. Haney, we know, had some stellar performances in the second half of the season in the first campaign of 2020. Tonight was clipped for speeding. That's put him in 18th position at the moment. One of the drivers who would need to take the wave to get it back on the lead lap. His teammate, we've seen before in Talent, was involved in one of those crashes that was towards the bottom of the racetrack.
Yeah, and these guys really banking on another quick yellow so they can pit without losing a lap and get 4 tires, but it's going to be a difficult way back for both Regan Jr. and Haney here, starting well deep in the field.
Absolutely at this point. One thing to note with some of these drivers, they were given prizes for their campaign performances in 2020 Season 1 in the PRL Cup Series sponsored by Diecast Kings. $40 was given to Richard Regan Jr., the season champion. James O'Brien, who finished second in the points, was given $30. Thomas Morris, $20 for their performances in the top 3 in the standings. Random prizes of $10 were given to Colton Lane, Rachel Hunt, and Rob Bisson Jr. as well for that campaign. Once again, congratulations for the prizes for season number 1. So these drivers already getting the one-to-go signal, and many competitors taking the wave on 15-plus sold tires right now to get back on the lead lap. 21 total will be on that cycle by the time they get to the green flag here, Christian.
Yeah, and those guys are going to have to really, really watch out for wheel spin. Being at the back, they're going to be in a really strange scenario when the field does go green. Obviously, they're racing each other, but at the same time, that's probably where the yellow is going to originate from, is those drivers who took the wave by.
I don't think they want to see that, though, Christian. And hope they want to see some good luck.
Well, yeah, for the guys who are taking the wave by, they want the yellow to originate higher up. They do want one, though. They need it for the tires.
We'll see how this start goes as the pace car is off. Paul Williams II in the Diecast Kings Chevrolet Camaro is off and away. Green flag is back out. And a great launch for Williams II off into turns 1 and 2. And many drivers already trying to get around some of the damage machines that were involved in the first yellow.
Jay Felton stuck on the top side right now. He's probably going to be, well, he looks like he's holding on to third. He's been let in. That's very kind of Adam Zemke to let him down onto that bottom lane there.
Braden Johnson already off the second spot. And we've seen how quick he has been. He's now got his drafting partner right behind him at the front of the field. 20 laps to go from Atlanta Motor Speedway. And Johnson's saving. He actually lifted hard off the gas into turn 1.
And this is something we saw in the very first run of the race. The leader shot right out there, burned up his tires, and then Jay Felton was able to just cruise on by after about 10 laps. So I'm wondering if they're trying to plan a similar strategy here.
Yeah, that looks exactly what they're trying to do right now is don't cook the right front and save. Johnson again, you can see right there, backing off the gas. Well, Williams II, he's not lifting. He's not saving as much, or at least going completely out of the throttle like we're seeing Johnson. Felton also doing a similar thing, and already the top 8 single file in one train.
Yeah, you can see it's most obviously on corner entry. You see Paul Williams drives away on the entry, but there you see Braden Johnson gets a better run off of 4, able to close that gap right back up again.
Yeah, they've already pulled a couple tenths from the third position in that train. New fastest lap for Johnson last time by with the 29.867. The fastest overall was by Zemke with the 29.827 at the start of the race in clean air. Continue to stay single file for the time being, but already Williams II is pushing up the hill more than the rest of the top 5.
And that kind of brings in what I was talking about pre-racing, that the drivers who can stay the lowest off of turn 4 tends to be the one who have the best tire wear. And as you saw there, Williams II running quite high off of 4 already. Puts a lot of stress on those right side tires to do that. See Braden Johnson behind him not doing that, able to run much lower.
At this point, when do you expect Johnson to try and make this move?
I would suspect that he's probably going to start having to go at it with about 10 laps to go.
Let's see, that's at about 6 laps from now, 16 to go at the moment here in the season opener for the PRL Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings. Associate sponsorship from ButtKicker. Williams II again, growing the gap similar to what we've seen in the first run of the race. And everybody just trying to get the rhythm. Don't forget, mind you, there are a ton of drivers we talked about in the wave around situation behind these two, and then some. Right now, the first driver in the wave around group features Lane and Regan Jr., I should rather say, leading that group of wave arounds in 16.
Yeah, you can see those drivers are suffering a lot on their older tires. That time by Regan Jr., 9.3 seconds off the lead already.
At that pace, do you think they're going to end up being a risk of going the lap down, though? Because the pace right now in comparison to the leaders, 30.1.
I think it's possible. I think it's towards the end of that line. I think drivers such as Tristan Callahan, who's already 23 seconds off the lead, he's definitely going to go a lap down here. Maybe Barron, Hilton, and Durbin are going to be close to going a lap down. I think Regan Jr. and Haney should be able to retain the lead lap because we only have about 14 to go right now.
Coming up 13 laps to go, and Johnson is starting to push a little bit. Williams II getting to the bottom a little bit easier that time, but Johnson has the run. Will he try and make the pass yet? No, he gives the push.
Yeah, really pushed him off there into 1. It's looking like he's trying to build up a big run, maybe into 3 this time, but looks too far back for me.
Remember when we started seeing him make moves at about this point of the run at the start of the race? He was all the way on the back bumper of the first car he made a pass to before he got through onto the bottom side off in turn 2, as you were referring to. But they will have to deal with the traffic of Tristan Callahan, the 21st position car. And Callahan elects to go high. Some of the drivers electing to try and get a slipstream, while others dive straight to the bottom.
Yeah, once we've got that battle going on for the lead between Williams and Johnson, the driver I'm watching out for is Jay Felton, because he's got to make a move at some point. We've seen how fast he was, and I think it's just a matter of time, but I don't think he wants to let Johnson clear Williams before he's already there on the attack, because if that happens, it's going to be very difficult for him to pass both cars.
And Williams II is starting to block now as the sun starts to go behind the clouds. Bit of a dicey move that time, and I think Williams II knows he's starting to fall off. He's trying to protect that bottom.
Yeah, he's not really picking lanes particularly well. He's gone for the middle right there. Johnson's going to clear him easily off of 4, surely.
Johnson, can he get completely clear? Just about. Does have a push from behind, and he's now the race leader. 10 laps to go from Atlanta Motor Speedway. Felton comes to help, and Johnson gets clear. Williams II also drops one more spot to 3rd.
Yeah, now it's down to whether Felton can pass Johnson. He's still got Williams to his outside, but he's going to be gone by the time he comes off a 4 this time by.
Felton already losing a couple car lengths in that fight down the backstretch. He's clear though, and Williams II, he's doing what was talked about a little bit at tracks such as Auto Club. There's the option of trying to make the pass or helping the car in front. It looks like Christian Williams II is saying, for me to have any chance of a narrow position here, I'm going to help.
Yeah, and I think Williams knows this. I think he kind of made his feelings on the race clear when he did that short strategy earlier, realizing he didn't quite have the pace to fight for the win. So I think he'll be happy to hold on to 3rd place here.
Meanwhile, Bisson Jr. just this lap was able to get himself into the top 5. He looks to try and hold on in front of Brendan Shatley and Joshua Daniels for that position, coming to 7 laps to go this time by. And Bisson Jr. has been very impressive, a +10 from the drop of the green flag, and got a good amount of speed with the strategy and the differences before that, and now is showing speed again at the right moment at the right time. Damian Zemke.
Yeah, he's had a really good race, just been clean, not made any mistakes on pit road, and just had a really solid run, and now he's looking at getting himself a top 5. As you said, he's looking like he's slightly better than Zemke right now, so he's probably going to have an opportunity to take 4th place before the end of the race.
Lead is now close because Johnson and Felton are separated by 1 car length. Felton nearly gave a shot to Johnson into turn 1 last time by, and now it's the matter though of will Felton try and make the move. 6 laps to go here at Atlanta.
And I think the earlier that Felton can be pressing the attack, the better. I think the longer it goes on, the more it swings in favor of Johnson, as we see going into 1, and got very close to the back of Johnson there.
These are the 2 fastest cars on the racetrack, already pulling away by a few tenths from Paul Williams II in the backdrop. Felton still not able to get a run quite yet. Zemke, meanwhile, just lost P4 to Bisson Jr., and Zemke now under attack by Chatley just in the backdrop as the top 3 take 5 to go.
Yeah, and just looking last time by off of 2, Felton really pushing the car hard, got pretty loose, nearly tagged the wall with the right rear.
Taking a look at Zemke now on your screen. He's looked great on the short runs today here, Christian. It's just at this point on, the car seems to clip off in terms of the tire.
Yeah, I think he just runs it a little bit too hard at the beginning of a run compared to the guys around, and maybe a half a tenth harder than he needs to, and then this kind of mid-run point, that's when that really starts to go against you. As we see, he's quite vulnerable right now, but I think he's on for maybe a top 6 still. I don't suspect he'll lose more than 1 position here.
Yeah, in decent position for that as we take a look at the leaders again. They've ran away from Williams II. Now it becomes the question here. Christian, do you think Felton will be able to get enough of a run here to even make a move on Johnson?
I think honestly he's too late in the day. I think he waited a little bit too long to try and press his advantage, and now it's swinging more and more in Johnson's favor. He doesn't look like he can get as close to the back bumper in 1 and 2 as he could before, and especially on the exit of 2, Johnson looks quite strong, although this time Felton got a pretty good run, but he's just too far back. He's 2 car lengths back right now, and I don't see him being able to close that up.
Coming to 2 laps to go as Johnson having a hard time arcing it down. You can see the difference though. Felton hugs the line in 3 and 4, slides up on the exit, still gets the run. Last time by was an 8/1000 second gain. That time, because of the tight entry for Johnson, closing up another 5 100s. He clips the apron. Felton able to save it, but loses some valuable time.
Yeah, he made a really good last lap, actually. He gained a lot more than I was expecting him to, but pretty much gave it all back right there, just clipping the apron in 1 and 2.
Coming to the white flag this time by 1 to go from Atlanta Motor Speedway races official. The question's going to be, will Johnson be able to go home mistake-free? Will Felton be able to make one last gap?
Johnson with a late arc right there, but it's giving him a good run down the back stretch. He's got about 2.5 to 3 car lengths over Felton going into 3.
Johnson arcs it down off the corner. Off the final turn, Braden Johnson wins the season opener for the PRL Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings. Felton finishes second, 3/10 behind. Paul Williams the second squeaks out a third position finish. Some impressive runs in this one today, Christian. But it seemed Johnson, who started towards the back, one of the fastest cars in the draft, and Felton with an impressive run as well, starting at the front of the field.
Yeah, I think Felton will be disappointed to lose that, given how strong he was in the first half of the race, but Braden Johnson was really, really good, especially in car-to-car battles that we saw early in the run. He was making moves, and he timed it perfectly to get himself to the lead, and a well-deserved win, I would say.
Post-race coverage for the PRL Cup Series coming up after these messages. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel live from the virtual Atlanta Motor Speed. Welcome back, everyone, to Atlanta Motor Speedway for tonight's coverage of the Precision Racing League Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings and ButtKicker. It was an eventful run today, and what was some great fun for these drivers in tonight's event. 2 drivers ended up being the class of the field, especially in the final 2/3 of the event. Braden Johnson, Jay Felton finished 1-2. Paul Williams the second played the strategy card right, got the caution flag he needed, and still squeaked out a third position finish. We'll be standing by with those 3 drivers in our post-race coverage. Robert Bissaw Jr. finished in 4th with Brendan Shatley with an impressive +20, rounding out the top 5. Joshua Daniels finished 6th, the pole sitter Adam Zemke in 7th, 8th Charles Sumner, J.D. Baker in 9th, and Danny Cervantes rounding out the top 10.
And we had Chad Brown, one of our biggest movers, up from 29th to finishing in 11th place. Really quiet race, but solid and made no mistakes. So congrats to him on just missing out on the top 10 there. Alongside him, David Wilson Jr. in 12th. Unfortunately, went the other way, started 3rd and fell back. But still comes home 12th, so a good result for him. Robert Milliken and Scotty Johnson. Unfortunately, Scotty Johnson, one of the guys competing at the front of the field, had that strange incident with the lap cars there, and unfortunately fell back to 14th. Colton Lane and Keith Haney coming home 15th and 16th. Pat Harvey and Richard Regan Jr. with that speeding penalty really dropped him back. Unfortunately, only able to recover to 18th for him. Behind him, Stephen Durbin in 19th and Brian Hilton in 20th as the last car on the lead lap.
Adam Shane finished one lap down in 21st. James Duke 22nd. Callahan, Kalen, Costello rounding out the top 25. Josue Tellez in 26th with Morris, Talent, Spicer, along with Freitas rounding out the top 30. Those are the drivers who made it to the grid for tonight's action here on the Global SimRacing Channel. But in the end, it was Braden Johnson who conquered them all, started in 10th, had some eventful battles, and in the end, took home the checker flag by about 0.3 of a second. Braden, first things first, how does it feel to be a winner in the PRL Cup Series, especially to open the season?
It is awesome. I don't think I could be in a better position. I am so happy, and yeah, what a great way to open the season.
First things first, let's talk about you having to start in the middle of traffic. Started in 10th after having a top 2 practice run on the board, but in the end, you looked like you were one of the best drivers in Dirty Air. How difficult was it to try and make the moves you did all night long?
It was pretty difficult, but what I tried to do is I had messed up my qualifying lap. I had to breathe coming out of 2, and that's why I had to start in the middle of the pack. But when I was going through, I knew to just save my tires, because when you go out there and you just abuse them, you know, you really pay for it. And on the long run, that's why I was so good, because the first part I would just say.
Yeah, it looked like you were very efficient in that saving tonight. But a strong run overall. A good way to start off the season in 2 here. Of course, lots of different tracks on the schedule. Your thoughts on how the season looks for what we'll see performance-wise for you in all 2020 season.
I'm pretty decent just about everywhere I run. I put a lot of time in to try to be good, and you know, so I think I'll be fine wherever I'm at, and I'm just going to keep going. So I think the season looks pretty.
Indeed, the next race at Homestead, Miami Speedway. Your thoughts specifically on that racetrack?
I really like that track, and I'm pretty good there, and I just hope that it's like how it usually is, you know, where there's 2 grooves to run, and, you know, I'm thinking it's going to be pretty fun driving these Cup cars.
Looked like you were having fun. Is there anyone you'd like to thank before we let you go?
Yes, I'd like to thank my buddy Jay, who came out with the 2nd place. We put a lot of time in together working on it, and I'm happy he runs with me. I'd like to thank y'all for putting on these good broadcasts. I always enjoy watching them whenever I'm in them and coming in and watching the show y'all put on. And I'd like to thank Diecast Kings for sponsoring this season of PRL. And I would like to thank PRL for putting on these races, and my girlfriend for putting up with me racing all the time.
Congratulations on the victory tonight. Well deserved.
Thank you, guys.
That was Braden Johnson coming home with victory. His friend Jay Felton is standing by with Christian Schauner.
Jay, pretty good run to second tonight. Obviously the dominant car in the first half of the race, and unfortunately not able to come away from with the win at the end there, but started second, finished second. Must be pretty happy overall, right?
Yeah, I am happy, Christian. It was a good run. I kind of hated to see the caution, you know, but you know, when Braden got ahead of me on the restart, the writing was kind of on the wall at that point, I think.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think the big thing was obviously you got the lead back right before the yellow came out, but I think the thing that really hurt you was that Paul Williams was able to beat you off of pit road, and then you restarted, and obviously, as you say, Braden was able to get by you, and that was kind of, yeah, once he got out ahead of Paul, it was always going to be difficult right there with the clean air and so on to get back past him. But definitely really, really strong performance in the first half of the race. One of the absolute fastest drivers out there, especially when the tires were worn. And can you kind of explain to us how you did that? Because a lot of drivers were struggling. We saw some guys even blow right fronts, so it looked like it was really about keeping the tires on it.
Well, Braden and Mike Eames and Tyler Pluff, they all helped me get prepared for this race, and that was something that we worked on a little bit, was longer runs, and you know, hoping to get some longer runs, because you know, when the first 10 laps, we're all the same, everybody's equal, and you got to figure out a way to separate yourself, because the cars are, with this tire model, I mean, we're just all over the top of each other. But anyway, I just didn't push it too hard, the first 6 or 7 laps. Just tried to hold my position and then tried to apply pressure. That's what I was doing.
Well, it definitely looked like a strategy that worked out very, very well. Obviously, came away with the second place and very, very strong long-run performance. Now, next week is Homestead, which is kind of a similar track in terms of the wear and the tire fall-off that we see. So I would expect that we'll see you be pretty strong there. Is that a track that you look forward to? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, I haven't raced there a whole lot. I'm just kind of getting back into ovals. I had run the F3 in the PRL and was struggling over there and thought I might come back over here and run some ovals and see if I could get, competitive again. And so, if I do my homework, I should be able to run okay. And if I just show up, there's no telling how bad it'll be, Christian.
Well, it definitely looks like it was a good decision to move back over to the Oval Series, and obviously worked out very, very well for this round. Now, before we let you go, is there anybody that you'd like to thank and give a shout out to tonight?
GSRC, you guys are great broadcasters. I mean, it's so fun to go back and watch a good broadcast, and I think you guys are the best. I want to thank Diecast Kings for supporting this league and letting us come in here and have fun. Thank you so much for your financial support. And I want to thank my team, EMP, for helping me and getting me ready to run these races.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for coming and chatting with us, and good luck for the following round at Homestead.
See you next week, guys.
That was Jay Felton coming home in second tonight. The man who finished in third was Paul Williams II. First things first, how do you feel coming home with the top 3 to start the season?
Whew, it almost got ugly there, didn't it, Justin? Oh, man, I took a shot, and it almost went south on me, but luck was on our side and ended up coming out with a good finish, which I was hoping for. I always like running at Atlanta. Last time we were here in the trucks, it's where I got my win, so definitely happy to start the season like this and start it like this for Diecast Kings, who supports the series.
I was about to ask actually about that. It seems, again, we've seen this multiple times. The 24/7 racing machines always like to pull the strategy card. What was your decision-making process on your strategy for this race to go very early on the pit window?
Well, what I was thinking was Jay had me covered. I mean, he was lightning fast there in that first half, and he pulled out to a 2-second lead. So I just thought, if I'm going to do anything, it's going to be on a strange strategy call. I knew the tire fall off was so bad that when guys were on new tires flying through the field, that it could get treacherous. So I was banking on making up a bunch of time, and maybe the caution comes out, and then I pretty much figured that strategy was dead, and the iRacing gods shined upon me.
Yeah, it also looked like, too, when you came out with that lead off the pit lane, you were fighting hard to try and keep that lead.
Yeah, after that caution, and I want to thank my Diecast Kings pit crew for allowing me to beat Jay off of the pit lane there. I mean, that certainly gave me an opportunity, but I knew I was going to have my hands full. And I was doing everything I could to try to protect the position. Braden got a nice couple of runs, and I was blocking, doing what I could, hoping Jay would start putting some pressure on him. But eventually it just ran out. So we brought her home third, and happy with that.
Indeed. Before I ask my last question, there's another thing I want to ask you about, because the Diecast Kings on their Facebook actually had a giveaway involving your teams and where you guys finish. For you had the ARC Series number, which will be number 3 for the winner of that giveaway. The Elite giveaway will end up being the person who has the same number of Josue Tellez, number 26 in that draw. That was an interesting partnership with Diecast Kings and your cars. What came about to bring that little partnership for those different draws for Diecast Kings tonight?
Yeah, it was a real cool little thing that that they were willing to do with us. I mean, that's what they do. They do giveaways, and they do raffles every day. I mean, I think they ran like 10 today. So anybody that's listening, if you haven't liked or joined their group or liked Diecast Kings on Facebook, look them up. Diecast Kings. It's an awesome page to be a part of. I spoke with the owners and just said, hey, this might be a neat thing to kick off our season. What do you think? And they were all for it. So really cool. I didn't get a chance to look at Josue's winner, but I know mine's KP Potts. So shout out to KP. He took the first 4 spots. So it looked like he was pretty well set there on that last run, no matter what happened. So yeah, really cool thing they did.
Is there anything you'd like to say before we let you go?
I'll just say real quick, thanks again for the broadcast. You guys do an awesome job. Thanks to the PRL. Back for another season. I'm looking forward to it. Had an awesome race tonight. Glad to see that we were able to run clean around each other. That was great. And always thanks to Diecast Kings for all their support for both 24/7 and the league as a whole.
Congratulations to the top 3 finish. Well deserved.
Thank you.
That was Paul Williams II coming home in 3rd. We also have a special guest joining us, the race director of this series, this campaign, and a series legend on the track, Bradley Hawley. First things first, Bradley, you coming into your first full campaign as race director. How are you feeling?
Well, after seeing how everything went today, pretty good. As race director, I'm going to try to get as much as I can from being here. Sometimes scheduling doesn't exactly work out the way I would like it, but we'll see how things go throughout the season.
What's kind of been your philosophy for this season as race director to make sure these events, such as tonight, go smoothly?
Just keeping everybody clean as best as we can, whether it's on track or on the radio, keeping from outbursts or anything like that. We had some issues last season to where we had some outbursts and we had to handle it, I guess the best way to put it. So as long as we can do that and make it to where everybody's having fun in PRL in general, that's our number one goal.
What are some of the things you feel viewers should know that may be new with you now in the race director seat for this season to keep an eye on the racetrack and as they watch along throughout the season?
Well, being a race director can be somewhat tricky, is because sometimes it can be a judgment call on someone getting a black flag cleared, or just reviewing some of the wrecks like tonight. I mean, the one incident we had I would say about a foot worth of net code that ended up causing the accident. So, it's just one of those can be a tough call, judgment call, on the spot.
Indeed. Second to last question, basically, what's kind of the message you want to bring to the fans who are watching on to what you want the series and what the on-track product is to be in your position, from your position rather?
Honestly, I would love to see every single race this season, all 10 of them, run like this. Very clean, get all our laps in, and put on a good show. I mean, the caution came out at a good time to make it to where the race ended fairly close, not spread out like it was before the caution came out, and just put on a good show.
Touching words, is there anything else you'd like to add before we let you get going?
I'd like to thank Diecast Kings for coming back on and sponsoring us. They're a great sponsor to have. We enjoy having them. PRL and all the organizers that I work with coming back and taking the time and getting all this stuff set up, and PRL for allowing us to have this league.
Thank you very much for the time, Bradley, and good luck the rest of the season in the race director role.
Thank you very much.
Once again, thanks to Braden Johnson, Jay Felton, Paul Williams II, and Bradley Hawley for joining us here in the broadcast booth. But once again, I'd like to thank the sponsors in Diecast Kings. First, shop Diecast Kings, your home for the best selection of NHRA and NASCAR diecast cards at diecastkings.com. You can also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/Diecast Kings. We also like to thank ButtKicker. ButtKicker products and their incredible immersion bring realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Feel what you've been missing and find out about it by going to thebuttkicker.com. At that note, Christian, is there anything you'd like to add before we get ready for Homestead?
Well, I think we saw some drivers have pretty rough nights out there. Obviously, Keith Haney and Richard Regan Jr. didn't have the nights they were expecting with those speeding penalties, and Regan Jr. really looked like he struggled a lot with the right front tire wear early in the run. Saw some new faces prove that they were extremely strong. Obviously, Braden Johnson and Jay Felton were finding out at the end, and both drivers were very, very impressive through the first half of the race. So I think it'll be interesting to see if at Homestead those two drivers still maintain form at the front of the field, and see how drivers such as Regan Jr. bounce back after this first race.
Have to see how they do at Homestead Miami Speedway. Always a fan favorite here on Global SimRacing Channel and all of iRacing. But with that, we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's action. We'd also like to thank the sponsors and companies that provide the software and hardware for broadcasts listed up on your screen now. Additional thanks to Jude Lalonde, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Ian, Christian, and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about Global SimRacing Channel when its upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at GSRC.storemvy.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page as well and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment here on the Global SimRacing Channel. As mentioned, the next race of the PRL Cup Series takes us to Homestead Miami Speedway. Be sure to tune in. Starts at 8:50 p.m. Eastern. That will be after, mind you, the third round of the season that takes place at Texas Motor Speedway. That will also be at 8:50 p.m. Eastern. The reason for that, the Major Series takes place as well this upcoming weekend. We also have our Cup Series races listed on your screen. Check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. I'll see you on the track.